research ethics are something that are absolutely crucial to any research project, whether you're a student or a researcher. So if you're just starting out and putting together your ethics proposal for an ethics committee to review, you're likely thinking, where do I start with this form, and what type of contents are the ethics committees looking to see? So if you're like me and you're doing a qualitative paper, so qualitative research is generally where I'm taking a subjective approach to try to interpret how particular experiences or events might be affecting subjects, in my case looking at students and thinking of how they've been influenced by a particular event in their experience and how that event or experience has shaped their academic journey or profile. Now, if you're doing a more quantitative study, you're likely drawing more from research data that's already been done, and you've found a niche that you want to potentially look at. How do you further explore that particular niche? So that might be if you're taking agriculture for an example and you're changing the feed additive. What in that particular feed additive gives you the impression that that is going to support the development of that nutrition for that animal or for that particular crop to develop? It might be a combination of the two, where you're looking at qualitative and quantitative data, where you're looking at a drug trial in medical research, where you might be thinking, okay, how do I interpret results where I need to take into account human subjects and taking the account for their personal requirements or personal needs and how they've particularly been affected by a particular drug trial, and also taking into account the drug's effectiveness and reliability in terms of whether you're looking for things such as weight loss, or you might even be looking at improvements in a particular area, or looking at an organ for a particular response to that particular drug or element. Now, when you've got to this point, you're then likely going to be describing what your research rationale is. So your rationale is the underpinning reason of why you're looking into this particular project area. So that might be, if you're looking at qualitative, that is explaining the theories behind your rationale and what your subjective interpretation of those theories are and how it applies directly to your research. Now, if you're looking at it from a more perspective of quantitative, you're taking the general data that has already been produced, which will often form the secondary basis or secondary data source for your research, and you're using that information to effectively explain why you're going to look at a further niche or further explore a particular area. Now, in that case, you might take a longitudinal analysis of a particular subject or population size, or you might be looking at a more cross-sectional approach where you're looking at, in a given period of time, why you're looking at that particular research variable. So when you're explaining that in your research rationale, you're explaining why you're either looking for a longer period of time or why you're looking at a very subjective snapshot. So a subjective snapshot in quantitative might be looking at whether you're measuring over a particular crop of poultry. You're thinking, okay, I want to see if this additive had any improvement in this particular population. Or you might be thinking, okay, I want to examine this particular farm over a series of particular samples or trials to see if it has any long-term effects. Qualitative research, you might be looking at a particular sample group given a particular period. So take COVID, whether you're looking at how the particular influence of individual students coming into in-person tutorials has been changed based on COVID, and you might look at that from a period immediately after the COVID period, or you might want to do it over a longer term study, so it might be looking at whether or not that factors are still in place 10 to 15 years down the line. Once you've got that information to hand, you then want to be starting to think about where do you go next. So this is where you summarize your methodology. So in your methodology, you might be thinking, okay, so I know roughly where I want to start, the core basis of my approach, and now I'm thinking, where do I go to next? So if you want to find out more about where you go to next for both your ethics form and for your methodology, tune into my next video and follow and like for more.